The royal armory was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed against your chest and made every breath feel heavier. Only the faint hum of energy fields cut through the stillness, mingling with the distant echo of footsteps bouncing off polished stone walls. The queen's armor sat on its pedestal, gleaming faintly under the alien lights, its surface scarred from the last battle. Each crack and dent seemed to whisper reminders of past struggles, victories, and losses. Her advisors hovered in the shadows, their unease palpable, waiting for her to notice the anomaly she hadn't yet sensed. A subtle vibration in the air made her pause. Something was out of place. It was faint at first, a whisper against her senses, but it grew steadily, like a pulse she couldn't ignore. She stiffened, scanning the armory with a careful, measured gaze. Her guards mirrored her tension, hands hovering near weapons that had not yet seen action in decades. The soft clinking of metal reached her ears, irregular, almost human in rhythm. Whoever, or whatever, was in her inner sanctum, they moved with purpose. The queen's breath hitched ever so slightly. She stepped closer to the pedestal, the polished floor reflecting her regal figure. Then, through the dim light, she saw it. A figure crouched over her armor, a human, calmly and deliberately tending to her sacred armor, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her mind froze for a heartbeat. No human had set foot in this chamber in centuries. No human dared. Her hand hovered above her ceremonial dagger, a trembling whisper of instinct against centuries of training. The human straightened slowly, the tools in his hands catching the light. His movements were precise, almost reverent, and yet there was a confidence there that unnerved her. She noticed a small emblem on his sleeve, an insignia forbidden in her court. Her heart skipped. He was no ordinary human. The metallic clinks echoed softly, mingling with the low hum of energy shields that lined the armory walls. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the polished floors, reflecting fragments of his movements and hers. She stepped forward, her flowing robes brushing against the stone, the faint rustle accentuating the tension. Every instinct screamed caution. Every part of her royal training whispered to strike, to demand answers, to banish the intruder. And then the human turned his head, meeting her gaze. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unsettlingly calm. For the first time in her life, the queen froze, not out of fear alone, but from recognition. Recognition of something she could not yet name. Something dangerous, something extraordinary. The emblem on his sleeve gleamed faintly under the armory lights, a silent warning and promise all at once. Her heart thudded in her chest as she realized that in this single moment, everything she had known, everything she had ruled over, was about to change. The hum of energy fields seemed to grow louder, the distant echoes of alien corridors fading as her world narrowed to the humans standing before her. A bead of sweat ran down her temple, unnoticed in her shock. She gritted her teeth, trying to summon the authority that had never failed her before. Yet the human's calm presence unraveled her composure in ways she could not understand. Her hand twitched near the dagger, and for a fraction of a second, time itself seemed to hold its breath. He stepped closer, deliberately, but never threateningly. Every step measured, precise, as if he had rehearsed this moment across countless worlds she could not imagine. The queen's eyes narrowed, studying him, trying to decipher his intentions, but his expression betrayed nothing. He was an enigma wrapped in a simple human form, a contradiction of fragility and power. "Who are you?" she demanded finally, her voice cutting through the silent tension like a blade. The words fell heavier than they should, weighted by centuries of mistrust and caution. The human did not flinch. Instead, he met her gaze steadily, as though he had expected her question. His calm demeanor, his fluent use of her royal tongue, sent a shock through her. This was impossible. Humans did not speak her language fluently. At least, none had for centuries. Her pulse raced, her mind a whirl of warnings and possibilities. Every story she had ever been told about humans, every cautionary tale, seemed to shatter in that instant. He bent slightly toward the armor, adjusting a small mechanism with astonishing precision. It clicked into place, perfectly aligned, a piece that even her best engineers had struggled with. The queen took a cautious step closer, trying to mask her awe. The emblem on his sleeve caught the light again, and a cold realization slithered through her. He was connected to a power thought extinct, a force whispered about in legends but never witnessed. Her instincts screamed danger, yet a strange curiosity pulled at her. She had never encountered a being like this, calm, skilled, and audacious enough to repair her armor without permission. And then she noticed the subtle details, the way his fingers moved, the slight scars across his knuckles, the intensity in his eyes. They were marks of experience, intelligence, and perhaps even survival in worlds she could scarcely imagine. Every instinct in her royal body urged her to act, yet she could not tear her eyes away. This human, standing before her in the sacred armory, had shattered the equilibrium of her world with the simple act of repairing what she believed untouchable. Time slowed. The hum of the energy shields, the soft clinks of the repaired armor, the distant echoes of the palace, all faded into the background. Her mind, usually so sharp and commanding, swirled with questions, doubts, and disquieting fascination. The human straightened fully now, tools in hand, and for the first time allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to touch his lips. The queen's breath caught. Something ancient stirred in her, a mix of fear, intrigue, and the first spark of realization. This human was no ordinary interloper. He carried secrets, knowledge, and perhaps even power that could redefine her reign. Her hand hovered above her dagger once more, not out of threat alone, but as a tangible connection to the authority she had always wielded so effortlessly. And in that moment, standing in the hallowed silence of the armory, the queen understood. Her life, her empire, and the world she thought she controlled were about to be irrevocably changed by the presence of a single human. Her eyes widened as the emblem caught the light one final time, and she froze completely, unable to speak, unable to move, caught between centuries of training and the undeniable truth unfolding before her. The human's calm, knowing gaze met hers fully now, and the air itself seemed to thrum with the promise of events that neither of them could yet fathom. The queen's heartbeat thundered in her chest as she studied the human before her. Every instinct screamed caution. Yet there was something in his calm demeanor, something deliberate and precise, that made her hesitate. She had faced countless threats, enemies that had tried to topple her throne, assassins that lurked in shadows, and yet this human was different. His presence was not violent, not overtly dangerous, but it carried a weight, an unspoken command that unsettled her in ways she had never felt. "Who are you?" she demanded again, her voice sharper now, laced with authority and suspicion. The human did not flinch. Instead, he straightened, his hand still faintly glinting from the tools he had just set aside, and met her gaze with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "I am someone who can help," he said fluently in her tongue. The words were measured, deliberate, each syllable carefully chosen. She flinched slightly. Humans rarely mastered her language, and fewer still spoke it with such fluency. Her mind raced. She recalled stories told by her ancestors, warnings etched into the very walls of her palace about humans and their unpredictable nature. They were clever, adaptable, resourceful, but also wild, chaotic, and dangerous. Yet here stood one, calm, precise, and competent. The human's eyes flicked briefly to the emblem on his sleeve, and a cold realization hit her. The symbol, forbidden and ancient, connected him to forces she had long believed extinct. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling just enough to betray the uncertainty she tried to mask. The human's lips curved faintly in acknowledgement, almost imperceptibly. "I know of a threat," he said, "one that your people cannot face alone. I came prepared to warn and to repair what was broken." His hands gestured toward the armor, perfectly restored to its original form. Every hinge, every plate aligned flawlessly, as if it had been reborn under his touch. The queen took a cautious step closer, her eyes scanning his features for any hint of deception. She noticed the scars along his fingers and forearms, subtle traces of past battles and survival. His hands moved with precision, confident yet controlled, revealing experience that belied his human form. A flicker of recognition passed through her mind. He had trained, fought, and lived in ways few humans could imagine, and yet he moved with a discipline that rivaled her best soldiers. Her advisors whispered among themselves, tension vibrating through the room like a low hum. Some whispered warnings, suggesting immediate action against a human, while others hesitated, sensing the unusual aura surrounding him. The queen ignored them all, focusing entirely on the figure which shattered the equilibrium of her armory and, perhaps, her world. "I know of a coalition," the human continued, his voice steady, precise, each word deliberate. "They move against you and your empire. Alien factions, united by greed and ambition, plotting a strike that can annihilate everything you hold dear." The queen's eyes narrowed. How could he know this? Humans had no access to their intelligence networks, no standing within the political hierarchies of her empire. Yet he spoke as though he'd been inside the council chambers, reading their plans like an open book. She felt the tension in her chest rise, a mix of disbelief, fear, and reluctant curiosity. His presence challenged everything she had been taught about humans, everything she had believed about their limitations. The emblem glinted faintly under the light again, a mark of the ancient secret order, thought long dead. Her pulse quickened. This human, connected to a power long erased from memory, was unlike anything she had encountered. "What is this emblem?" she demanded, pointing toward the symbol. The human's gaze flicked downward briefly, acknowledging it without fear. "It is a lineage, a legacy. One that has survived beyond what anyone thought possible," he explained. "And it has led me here to you." The queen's throat went dry. The words were cryptic, yet their weight was undeniable. She sensed that this was no ordinary human, no simple repairman or wanderer. He carried knowledge, power, and purpose that could tip the balance of her empire in ways she could not yet predict. Her mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, and contingencies. Could she trust him? Could she even afford not to? The very air seemed charged with energy, the hum of the shields around them rising in pitch as if in anticipation of the choices about to be made. Every instinct in her body warred with every calculation her mind produced. The human stepped closer, deliberately slow, yet his movements remained non-threatening. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that was almost unnerving. "The threat is coming sooner than you think," he said softly. "If you do not act, everything will fall. But with your consent, we can prepare and we can survive." His words were measured, almost persuasive. Yet she sensed a subtle warning beneath them, an unspoken understanding that failure was not an option. The queen's pulse quickened, and a bead of sweat traced down her temple. She had faced impossible odds before, yet the presence of this human, calm and commanding, changed the rules entirely. She realized that the world she had ruled with certainty and control was no longer predictable, no longer safe. This human carried the key to her survival, or her destruction. For a moment, silence fell. The hum of the shields and the faint clinks of the repaired armor were the only sounds in the room. The queen studied him, memorizing every detail, the sharpness of his gaze, the faint scars, the steady confidence, the forbidden emblem that marked him as something extraordinary. And in that suspended moment, she understood that everything was about to change. Her advisors remained frozen, unsure whether to act or remain still, but the queen's focus was entirely on him. She could feel the weight of centuries pressing down, the legacy of her rule, the responsibilities of her empire, all converging in this one fragile instant. Finally, she took a deep breath, tried to reclaim control over her racing thoughts. "You speak as if you know everything," she said carefully. "Yet I know nothing of you. Tell me, why should I trust you?" The human's calm gaze never wavered. "Because I have come prepared to act where others cannot. And because your survival depends on it," he replied. There was certainty in his voice, a quiet confidence that left no room for doubt. Yet the queen could feel the weight of the unknown pressing heavily. Her chest tightened. She understood now that trust would be dangerous, yet necessary. And as she studied him, the faintest spark of curiosity ignited. Curiosity mingled with caution, fear, and the undeniable sense that her world was shifting in ways she could not yet comprehend. The emblem glinted one last time under the armory's light, and in that flash, the queen realized that the human standing before her was a catalyst for a change that could either save her empire or shatter it completely. The tension in the armory was almost unbearable. The queen's gaze never left the human as he worked. each precise movement revealing a skill and knowledge that seemed impossible for someone of his kind. Her advisors whispered nervously in the shadows, their doubts and fears barely contained, but the queen ignored them. Every instinct she had honed over decades told her to strike, to banish, or at least interrogate. But another instinct, deeper and more primal, held her in place. Curiosity. "Tell me your name," she demanded, her voice cutting to the low hum of energy shields. The human paused, turning his head slightly, his eyes locking with hers. "I am Kale," he said simply. The queen repeated the name under her breath, tasting it, testing it, as though the sound itself could reveal truth or deception. Kale, a human name, yet it carried with it the weight of confidence and calm that unsettled her. He moved closer to the armor, adjusting a hinge with delicate precision. Every click and alignment of the plates resonated with authority, as if he were rewriting the history of the armory with each motion. The queen stepped forward, her long robes brushing against the polished floor, her hand unconsciously reaching toward the dagger at her side. Her pulse raced, yet she found herself drawn to him, not by trust, but by a magnetic fascination she did not understand. "Kale," she said cautiously, "you speak our language with fluency. You understand our ways, our customs, yet you are human. How is this possible?" He looked at her calmly, his expression betraying neither arrogance nor fear. "I have learned what I needed to survive," he replied, "and what I have learned has brought me here, to you, to your world, to this moment." Her eyes narrowed. The emblem on his sleeve caught the light again, a forbidden symbol of an order long thought extinct. Her heart thudded painfully. Could this human truly possess knowledge and connections that she had only read about in the most secretive scrolls of her empire? Every fiber of her being warned of deception, yet every rational thought whispered that the truth might be more incredible than she had imagined. Kale stepped back, gesturing toward the repaired armor. "This was damaged in ways even your best engineers could not repair," he said. "And yet it is whole again. But my purpose is not the armor. It is the threat approaching your empire." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The queen's breath caught, and she realized the stakes were far higher than she had yet comprehended. "Threat?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What threat?" He met her gaze steadily, unwavering. "A coalition of factions, unseen and united by ambition and greed. They seek to dismantle everything you have built. I know of them because I have walked paths no one in your empire has ever crossed." The queen's mind raced. Every story she had been told about humans emphasized cunning, adaptability, and audacity. But this was something else entirely. Kale moved with the assurance of someone who had survived unimaginable challenges, and now brought that knowledge directly to her. She felt a mixture of fear, admiration, and disbelief swirl inside her chest, a storm she had never anticipated. Her advisors whispered urgently now, some suggesting immediate action against Kale, others urging patience. The queen's gaze, however, never wavered from him. Every instinct she had honed over decades, the strategic mind, the warrior's reflexes, the ruler's authority, was being tested by a single human who dared enter her inner sanctum uninvited. "Kale," she said finally, her voice stronger, controlled, yet tinged with an unspoken curiosity, "you claim knowledge of this threat, and yet you stand here calm, even in our most sacred chamber. Why? What is it that you truly want from me?" Kale's eyes softened just slightly, the faintest spark of acknowledgement flickering in them. "Not from you, but with you," he replied. "Your survival, and the survival of your empire, depends on our choice to act together. Alone, your people are vulnerable. Together, we may stand a chance." The queen's chest tightened as the enormity of his words sank in. Trusting him would be dangerous, potentially fatal. Rejecting him could cost her empire everything. Her eyes lingered on the emblem once more, and she realized that the human standing before her was no ordinary outsider. He was a catalyst, a force beyond her understanding, and her next decision would shape the fate of her entire world. For a moment, silence enveloped them. The hum of energy shields, the soft clink of the repaired armor, even the faint whispers of her advisors, all faded into the background. All that remained was the human and the queen. Two figures bound by circumstance, standing at the threshold of a choice that could alter the very course of history. The queen inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "Very well, Kale," she said, her voice resolute, though her mind still spun with questions. "Tell me everything. I need to know the truth about this threat, and why you, a human, know it so well." Kale nodded once, his calm demeanor unwavering. "Then listen carefully," he said. "For time is shorter than you believe, and the dangers approaching your empire are unlike anything you have faced before." War preparations swept through the palace like a storm. The queen moved with purpose, her robes flowing behind her, the repaired armor gleaming faintly under the alien sunlight. Kale stood beside her, calm and calculating, a human presence that somehow brought a strange balance to the chaos. Advisors rushed through the corridors, issuing orders, while soldiers trained under the queen's watchful eyes, their movements precise, almost ritualistic. Yet behind every measured step and careful strategy, tension crackled like electricity. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation. The queen studied Kale as they walked. His calm confidence contrasted sharply with the swirling uncertainty around them. Every move he made was deliberate, measured, and she realized with a mixture of awe and disbelief that his understanding of strategy and tactics was unlike anything her empire had seen. Together, they orchestrated defenses, blending alien technology with human ingenuity. Shields were reinforced, patrols doubled, and intelligence networks expanded beyond traditional boundaries. Each decision calculated to protect the empire from the impending threat. Then, just as the first wave of attack seemed imminent, betrayal struck from within. One of her trusted advisors, motivated by greed and fear, attempted to sabotage the alliance. Alarms blared, echoing to the palace halls, while Kale reacted instantly, neutralizing the threat with precision. The queen's pulse raced, her hands trembling slightly as she realized how close they had come to disaster. She had relied on her instincts for decades, but even she could not have anticipated the cunning or ruthlessness of betrayal within her own court. The battle outside erupted with violent intensity. Energy shields shimmered and cracked under enemy fire, explosions lighting the alien sky in bursts of orange and blue. Soldiers fought with disciplined precision, guided by both the queen's orders and Kale's unconventional strategies. The queen moved among them, directing, inspiring, and sometimes intervening directly, her presence a beacon of resolve amidst the chaos. Kale's human ingenuity turned the tide at critical moments, using unexpected maneuvers that baffled their enemies and kept their forces one step ahead. Despite the violence and destruction, a strange rhythm emerged, an uneasy harmony between alien precision and human adaptability. The queen realized that she had underestimated humans entirely, and Kale's presence reshaped not only her strategy, but her perception of what was possible. Each victory, however small, strengthened their bond and reshaped the court's understanding of the alliance. Yet the climax of the struggle tested their fragile trust. A second betrayal, subtler but equally dangerous, threatened to undo all their efforts. The queen and Kale faced it together, relying on intuition, courage, and unspoken understanding that failure was not an option. The human's calm demeanor steadied her as they maneuvered through the palace corridors, neutralizing threats with precise efficiency. For the first time, she realized that survival depended not only on strength but on the ability to adapt, to trust, and to embrace unexpected allies. Finally, the dust settled. The empire had endured, but nothing was the same. The queen stood before her repaired armor, the sunlight glinting off its surface, and allowed herself a moment to breathe. Kale remained by her side, silent yet vigilant, a constant reminder of the human ingenuity and courage that had turned the tide. The queen's perception of humans had shifted irrevocably. They were no longer outsiders, unpredictable and dangerous. They were capable, adaptable, and perhaps, in the right circumstances, indispensable. She met Kale's eyes and saw not only the calm determination of a survivor, but the promise of a future forged in alliance rather than fear. Even as the palace recovered and her court began to rebuild, the queen knew that this was only the beginning. New threats would come, new challenges would test the limits of her empire, and Kale's presence would remain a constant, a catalyst for both change and growth. In the silence that followed the storm, the queen allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. The emblem on Kale's sleeve caught the light one final time, and she understood fully that the human standing beside her had not only saved her empire, but had shattered her preconceived notions and reshaped her world entirely. Their journey together was only beginning, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation.